I always thought I had control over my life, but I was wrong. I was so very wrong. One day, I opened the door to find a legal letter delivered by a stoic courier, and everything I believed in collapsed around me. In my hand, I held the proof that the father of my unborn twins was already married, and his wife was threatening to ruin everything I treasured. I felt my heart pound as if it might burst. In that moment, I understood that I was completely alone, and I could either run or fight for my children's future. That was the day I realized my life would never return to the way it used to be. It still echoes in my mind like a haunting refrain in a song. But to make sense of it all, I should start from the beginning. The day I met Oscar K. at my friend's wedding. I was standing on a wide open lawn, my best friend Stella's voice lingering in my ear. She was the bride, and she had just introduced me to a small group of her new husband's acquaintances. It was a bright afternoon, and the music was gentle. The crowd was full of whispers and laughter. Everyone looked radiant, and they all seemed at ease. I, on the other hand, felt a touch of shyness creeping through me. I am Nina Riva, a music therapist for underprivileged children. That day, I had chosen a simple mint green dress that swirled around my knees. My long hair was piled on top of my head in a loose bun. I still remember how my heart was pounding even though it was just an ordinary introduction. That was because weddings had always left me feeling a bit emotional. I loved seeing people gather to celebrate love, but it also stirred a longing in me for something I felt was missing. Stella held my hand and pulled me forward, guiding me through the maze of guests until we approached a tall man with intense dark eyes. He gave me a polite nod and introduced himself as Oscar K., CEO of the K Foundation. I had heard of the K Foundation in passing. They funded art programs, medical research, and community outreach projects. They were known for their powerful presence in the city. In all honesty, I had never expected to meet the man behind it. He looked to be in his late 30s. He wore a crisp black suit that fit him well, and his posture spoke of self-confidence. Yet, there was a softness in the way he gazed at me. I found that surprising, especially for someone so well-known. We exchanged a few polite words, mostly about the wedding decorations and the music playing in the background. I felt a strange tug in my heart, like some invisible string drew me closer to him. A few moments later, he excused himself to greet other guests, and I went to find Stella. She was laughing with her husband, Dean, while a photographer snapped pictures. Stella saw me coming and winked at me. "Did you meet Oscar K?" she asked with a knowing smile. "Yes," I nodded. "He seems different from what I expected." Stella's smile grew wider. "He's nice. He's a generous sponsor for some of Dean's charity events, but he tends to keep to himself." My day went on, filled with wedding festivities. I danced, ate cake, and tried to savor every moment. Still, at the back of my mind, I kept thinking of that brief talk with Oscar. I felt something had connected us, though I couldn't quite name it. It was like discovering a hidden melody in a piece of music, waiting to be explored. Late in the evening, when the air had cooled and most people had moved indoors, I found myself sitting alone at a table by the flower arrangements. I was lost in thought, staring at the dancing lights in the distance. That was when Oscar approached me again. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. "Sure," I replied softly. He placed his glass on the table. "I've seen you wandering around. You look reflective. Everything all right?" I told him about my job as a music therapist for children, especially those who came from low-income backgrounds. I spoke of how I use songs and rhythms to help them express emotions and find peace. As I spoke, Oscar listened with an intensity that both comforted me and made me nervous. He leaned forward, arms on the table, taking in my every word. When I finished, he offered a slight smile. "What you do is amazing. Many people with your talent might go for more glamorous work, but you choose to help those in need." I felt a rush of warmth spread through me. "Thank you," I answered. "Sometimes it's hard to find funding or supplies. Our group doesn't have a lot of resources." Oscar gave me a thoughtful look. "I might be able to help." "You've already helped many communities," I said. "I'm sure you get requests all the time." He nodded. "We do. but I want to learn more about your work. If you ever need anything, feel free to reach out. I believe in the power of art and music to change lives." There was a moment of silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like a shared understanding. Then he stood up and offered me his hand. "Would you like to dance?" I hesitated, then agreed. The band was playing a slow waltz. As we danced, the world around us fell away. I breathed in the faint scent of his cologne, a mix of spice and fresh citrus. My head rested against his shoulder, and we swayed in time with a gentle tune. Something in me stirred, an awareness I rarely felt. When the song ended, I thanked him and excused myself. My heart was beating fast, and I needed a moment alone. I found my way to an empty corridor near the restrooms, where a vase of white roses stood. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. He was kind, genuine. I felt myself drawn to him more than I expected. But deep down, a warning bell rang. I had been hurt in the past, lied to by people I trusted, and I did not want to open myself to heartbreak again. Still, I could not stop thinking about him. I hoped that maybe, somehow, the night would give me a sign if I was walking down the right path. 1 week passed before I received a large package at the community center where I worked. It arrived with my name on the box. Inside, I found new instruments, guitars, drums, and a few keyboards. There were also colored pencils, paint sets, craft paper, and a note that read, "For the children, let them create. Let them find hope in sound and color." Oh, Dake. My eyes filled with tears. I thought it was from Oscar, though he did not sign his full name. This was more than I ever dreamed of getting as a donation. I rushed to call Stella, but she was busy on her honeymoon. I had no way to contact him directly, so I sent a thank you note to the K Foundation office, hoping it would reach him. The next few days, I immersed myself in my work. The children were beyond thrilled with the new materials. We spent hours painting murals and playing simple songs. Seeing their eyes light up gave me more joy than anything I had felt in a long time. Knowing that someone believed in our mission meant so much. During that time, poems began arriving in plain envelopes addressed to me at the center. They were beautiful lines about music, nature, and the healing power of hope. They always ended with the initials OK. I had no doubt who was sending them. Each poem felt like a piece of a conversation we were having from a distance, a conversation that reminded me I wasn't alone. Eventually, he called me. I was in the middle of leading a small choir of kids, so I had to sneak out into the hall to take the call. "Hello," I said, a bit out of breath. "Nina." His voice was quiet yet confident. "It's Oscar." My heart skipped a beat. "Hi," I answered softly. "I wanted to thank you for everything. You have no idea how much the children love the instruments and art supplies." He chuckled. "I'm glad. It's the least I can do. Is there any chance you would be free for dinner tonight?" I glanced at the clock on the wall. "Tonight?" "Yes," he said, with a hopeful tone. "I know this is sudden, but I'd like to talk more about your work and about life. I feel like we share certain beliefs, and I'd like to get to know you better." I hesitated for a moment, nervous but excited. "That sounds nice," I finally managed. "I can meet you around 7. He agreed, and we arranged a time and place. I hung up, my heart fluttering. A small voice in the back of my mind reminded me to be careful, but I wanted to take this chance. That night, I wore a navy blue dress with a modest cut, simple earrings, and low heels. Oscar met me at the entrance of a quiet restaurant that overlooked a city park. The place had large windows, so I could see the lights of downtown in the distance. We sat across from each other, and I tried not to feel overwhelmed by his presence. In the dim glow of the table lamp, I noticed the slight lines on his face and a gentle warmth in his eyes. It was like he had many stories locked away inside him, but he wasn't ready to share them all at once. The conversation flowed easily. We talked about the children's reactions to the new instruments and shared stories from our past. I told him how I had always loved music, that it was my refuge when my parents argued. By the time I was a teenager, I had sworn I would use music to help others find peace in their own storms. Oscar listened, nodding. He told me he had grown up with great privilege, but that his family's business life had trapped him. There were constant demands, and he rarely had time to follow his own passions. He was good at leadership, building partnerships, and running his company, but his heart often felt caged. I see people who have nothing, and yet they smile, he said. They find joy in simple moments. It's humbling. It made me start the foundation, hoping to give back. But sometimes I wonder if it's enough. It sounds like you've done a lot of good, I said gently. He exhaled. Yes, but I've also made mistakes, and I'm not proud of everything in my life. His words hung in the air. I felt a tug of concern, but something in his tone made me think he had burdens he wasn't ready to name. I decided not to push. After dinner, we walked outside. The night was cool, and the park's lake shimmered under the streetlights. We strolled along the water, not saying much. At one point, I stumbled slightly on an uneven patch of ground, and Oscar reached out to steady me. His arms slid around my waist, and for a moment we stood there, inches apart. He leaned in, and without thinking, I lifted my face to his. Our lips met, a gentle, cautious kiss that carried a tender promise. My heart pounded so loudly, I was sure he could hear it. When we pulled away, I felt flustered, but I didn't step out of his arms. His eyes searched mine, as if asking if this was all right. I nodded with a small smile. He guided me to a bench near the water, and we sat down. He took my hand, holding it softly. I don't want to rush you, he whispered, but I can't deny I'm drawn to you. I haven't felt this way in a long time. I swallowed hard, my chest filled with a nervous thrill. I feel it too. We ended the night with that quiet promise, as he called a car to take me home. I couldn't sleep for hours, replaying every moment in my mind. Over the next several weeks, we grew closer. Oscar would visit the community center on his lunch breaks, watch me work with the children, and sometimes he'd join in, clapping along or reading them stories. The kids adored him. They knew he was important, but he never acted superior. He was more like a caring uncle who wanted to make them laugh. Outside of that, we went on more dates. Usually, we chose small, out-of-the-way places where we could talk without the prying eyes of reporters or socialites. I learned more about his foundation, the projects he funded, and his desire to expand them even further. He insisted on making sure the music therapy program had everything it needed. He also started writing more poems, sometimes leaving them on my desk at the center or slipping them into my mailbox at home. Each poem felt like a rose left on my doorstep, simple gestures that meant so much. Yet, I noticed a certain tension in him. He'd check his phone often, frown at text messages, or excuse himself to take calls in private. Once, I overheard him arguing with someone over the phone, though he ended the call the moment he saw me. When I asked about it, he said it was business issues, and I believed him. I knew being a CEO wasn't easy, so I tried not to pry. One Friday evening, we had planned to meet at a charming little cafe near my apartment. I got there first, sitting by a tall window that looked out onto a busy street. The sun was setting, and people hurried by, some with groceries, others on their phones. I had a cappuccino in front of me, the foam still untouched. I checked my watch every few minutes, waiting. An hour passed, and Oscar still hadn't shown up. I tried calling, but he didn't answer. My heart sank. Was he all right? Had something happened? After another half hour, I finished my coffee and headed home, feeling worried and confused. The next day, he called to apologize, saying an urgent matter had come up that he couldn't talk about yet. He sounded upset, and I could feel the strain in his voice. I was relieved he was safe, and I tried not to let the disappointment linger. Deep down, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden from me. We made new plans for that weekend. He invited me to his penthouse for dinner. I was both excited and nervous, never having seen his home. When I arrived, the doorman let me in with a kind smile and pointed me to the private elevator that went straight up to the top floor. His penthouse was stunning. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing the city skyline in all its nighttime glory. The space felt modern, but not cold. Warm lights, comfortable furniture, and small sculptures made it feel like someone lived there instead of just visiting. A large fireplace flickered at the far end of the living room, casting soft shadows on the floor. Oscar greeted me in a black sweater and dark slacks. He looked more relaxed than usual, but I could still sense an edge of tension beneath his calm. "I'm sorry about the other night," he said, handing me a glass of wine. "I don't like breaking promises." I smiled weakly. "As long as you're safe." We sat down on the couch, and he pulled me close. Soft music played through hidden speakers. He told me about some new foundation projects, including a children's art festival he wanted me to lead. The more he talked about it, the more excited I became. It felt like we were building something special together. Time slipped away, and we ended up in each other's arms. One thing led to another, our touches filled with tenderness and longing. We kissed and let go of all our worries for that night. It was supposed to be just a moment of comfort and closeness. Neither of us spoke about the future. Neither of us put a name on what we were doing. It was just a fleeting, intimate connection. I woke up in the early morning light, tangled in sheets and a swirl of emotions. My mind was hazy, but I felt a calm warmth. I reached over to find the space next to me empty. My heart clenched for a moment, fearing he had left. But then I heard movement in the kitchen. The smell of coffee drifted through the air. Slipping on the shirt he had worn the night before, I padded into the kitchen. He stood at the counter, frying eggs. He turned, and a gentle smile touched his lips. "Morning," he said. I smiled shyly. "Morning." We ate breakfast quietly, occasionally sharing glances that made my cheeks burn. It felt right, though. It felt like a step toward something meaningful. After the meal, I changed back into my clothes. As I was leaving, he walked me to the private elevator and pressed a soft kiss to my forehead. "Thank you," he whispered. "Last night meant a lot to me." I felt my heart flutter. "It meant a lot to me too," I said, stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed, I saw him standing there, hands in his pockets, looking at me with something that seemed close to longing. I left his building with hope blossoming inside me. A month passed. My workload increased, and so did Oscar's. We still managed to see each other, though not as often as I would have liked. Then I started feeling strange, dizzy at times, my stomach unsettled, and I was unusually tired. I wrote it off as stress and stayed focused on the kids at the center. But when I missed my monthly cycle, my heart lurched. One morning, I gathered all my courage and bought a pregnancy test from a nearby pharmacy. In my small bathroom, I waited, heart pounding, until the test showed positive. My hands shook and tears welled in my eyes. I stared at myself in the mirror, my mind a whirl of shock and wonder. I had not planned for this. I was just starting to let myself fall for Oscar. But was I ready to become a mother? And what about him? I sat on the edge of the tub, thinking about how to tell Oscar. He was busy running a major foundation, dealing with all sorts of pressures. Would he be happy? Angry? Scared? I didn't know. But I had to tell him soon. Before I could work out a plan, I began experiencing sharp pains in my stomach. They came and went in waves. I feared the worst. I rushed to the doctor, where they did an ultrasound. My eyes widened when the screen showed 2 tiny heartbeats. Twins. The doctor told me I was early in my pregnancy, but everything seemed normal. The pains might just be from stress. She advised rest and regular checkups. I walked out of the clinic in a daze. Twins. I was carrying 2 little lives inside me. It was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. I called Oscar later that day, asking to meet him in person. He heard the worry in my voice, so we agreed to meet at my apartment. When I opened the door, he stepped inside, concerned. "What's wrong?" he asked. "You sounded upset on the phone." I motioned for him to sit on the couch. I felt cold despite the warmth in the room. My hands shook slightly as I held them in my lap. "Oscar, I'm pregnant," I said softly. "We're going to have twins." For a moment, he said nothing, just stared at me. I watched a kaleidoscope of emotions flicker across his face. Surprise, fear, and something else I hoped was love. He swallowed and reached for my hand. "Twins," he asked, his voice thick. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "I got it confirmed at the clinic." I'm sorry if this is a shock. I didn't plan it." He squeezed my hand, eyes darting down to my stomach. "No, you have nothing to be sorry about," he said. "This is just huge. I never expected, but it's not your fault. I have to figure out how to handle this." He started pacing across my small living room, running a hand through his hair. My heart sank a little at his choice of words. Handle this. But I tried to remain calm. "We will figure it out," I said, standing. "Together, I hope." He paused, looked at me, then pulled me into his arms. I felt his heartbeat, and I exhaled a small sigh of relief. "I'm not running away," he said, pressing his forehead to mine. "I promise. I'm just blindsided. But I care about you, and I want you to be safe." He stayed with me that night. We talked about the future, our fears, and the uncertain path ahead. He told me he wanted to support me and the babies. He'd make sure we had everything we needed. When he left in the morning, I felt a strange mixture of hope and unease. Something was still off. I sensed he was hiding part of his life from me. My worst suspicions came true a week later. I was at the community center, finishing a session with the children, when an older woman I didn't know walked in, scanning the room. She was tall, with fierce eyes, dressed in an elegant coat. Her heels clicked across the floor. She asked for me by name, so I walked over, my stomach tying itself in knots for reasons I couldn't explain. Without greeting me, she said, "I'm looking for the woman who's got herself involved with my husband." I froze, blinking. "What?" I managed to stammer. She arched an eyebrow. "I'm Laura Vett. I'm Oscar's wife." My breath caught in my throat. My heart hammered, and I felt dizzy. I tried to form words, but my mind went blank. "Wife. He had a wife?" "Don't act surprised," she said sharply. "Or perhaps you really didn't know. Regardless, stay away from him. I won't let anyone ruin my reputation or his. We have an agreement, and we plan to keep it." She looked me over with cold disdain, as if I were nothing more than an obstacle. "If you think he will leave me for you, you're mistaken." She paused, then her eyes dipped toward my stomach. "I hear you're pregnant. Let me guess, he told you he's not truly married, right? Or that it's complicated. He's good at that." Tears pricked my eyes. I didn't want to break down in front of her, but the words I wanted to say died in my throat. All I managed was a trembling whisper, "Please leave." She gave me a final, scornful look and walked away. I stood there reeling. The children were staring, confused and worried. One of the older kids came up to me, tugged on my sleeve, and asked if everything was okay. I swallowed hard, tried to steady my breathing, and told him everything was fine. But inside, I felt my whole world shatter. When I reached Oscar by phone, my voice shook with anger and betrayal. "You're married?" I exclaimed. "Your wife just showed up at my workplace." He was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. "It's not what you think. It's a marriage on paper, a business deal. Her father and mine set it up to merge parts of our companies years ago. We never lived like husband and wife. But the contract is strict. If I break it, her family can destroy our name and half the foundation's funding. It's complicated." I listened in disbelief. "And you never told me?" "I was going to," he insisted. "I needed more time to handle it. Laura won't let go easily. She's threatened to cause a scandal if I leave her. I didn't want you to be caught in this mess." Tears slid down my cheeks. "Well, it's too late. She's already caught me. She humiliated me in front of the kids today. Don't you realize how hurtful this is?" "I know," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I was trying to protect you, but I see I made it worse. Please, Nina, let me fix this. Let me handle Laura." I ended the call, still trembling with anger and sorrow. I couldn't believe the kind, gentle man I'd grown to care for had this huge secret. I felt betrayed, even if I believed part of him had wanted to shield me from it. In the following days, I ignored his messages, burying myself in work. The children noticed my lack of laughter. They tried to cheer me up, offering me drawings or playing songs I had taught them. I forced a smile for their sake, but my heart ached. I was pregnant with twins, and the father was already married. Meanwhile, my body went through changes that reminded me every day of my new reality. My nausea continued, and fatigue weighed me down. I put on a brave face, but inside I was fragile. Oscar showed up at the community center one afternoon. I was alone in the small office I used for paperwork. I tensed when I saw him walk in, but I didn't turn him away. He gently closed the door, his face lined with worry. "I'm sorry," he began. "I can only imagine how hurt you feel. But I promise you, my marriage is just a contract. There's no love there. I've been trying to end it, but Laura's family threatens to pull funding for my projects, and they could go to court." He ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "I was wrong to keep it from you, but I'm desperate to protect the foundation. It does so much good. And now I want to protect you and our children." My eyes burned with tears, but I managed to keep my voice steady. "Don't you see how this looks? You kept me in the dark. Laura came here, threatened me. I can't just overlook that." He moved closer, tentatively taking my hands in his. "I know it's unfair to ask you to trust me, but please, Nina. I love you. I love our unborn children. I'm working on freeing myself from this arrangement. If you'll let me, I want to stand by you." I searched his eyes, seeing genuine remorse. A part of me still yearned to believe him. Slowly I nodded. "I need time, but I won't let you vanish from our children's lives. I want them to have a father who cares." He squeezed my hands, relief washing over him. "Thank you. I promise you, I'll make this right." We shared a long hug, and for a moment I let myself rest against his chest, feeling the familiar comfort of his heartbeat. My problems didn't vanish, but I felt less alone. Weeks turned into months. My belly grew, and I started wearing loose dresses. The kids at the center would touch my stomach, fascinated by the idea of babies. Some would sing lullabies to my unborn twins, and it made me cry with gratitude. Oscar and I tried to spend time together without drawing too much attention. We knew if the press got wind of the story, it could spark a scandal that would shake the foundation. I hated feeling like a secret, but I understood the stakes. He assured me he was pushing forward with lawyers to end his business marriage, but Laura's side kept throwing obstacles in his path. Rumors leaked into the media that Oscar K. was in conflict with his wife. I read headlines with dread, worried that soon they would uncover my name. One evening, Oscar took me to a small cabin by a lake a few hours outside the city. It was a place he used as a personal retreat. We spent the weekend there, away from the chaos. I felt the babies kicking, and he placed his hand on my stomach, eyes shining with wonder. "They're strong," he whispered, smiling gently. In that moment, I saw the father he longed to be. The gloom of stress and secrets seemed to fade. We talked about baby names, what color we wanted to paint the nursery, and how we would manage our schedules. For the first time in months, I felt happy. I even allowed myself to imagine us as a true family. But our peace was short-lived. On our final night at the cabin, as we sat by the fire, Oscar's phone rang. He checked the caller ID and cursed under his breath. He stepped outside to take the call, but I could still hear bits of his angry voice through the thin walls. When he returned, his face was pale. "That was Laura," he muttered. "She says she's got evidence against me. She plans to leak documents to the press if I don't back off from seeking a divorce. She must have someone watching us, because she knows where we are right now." A chill ran down my spine. "What does she want?" He sank into the armchair, rubbing his temples. "Money, control. She wants to force me to remain legally bound to her so she can keep her status in society. Her father stands to gain from certain deals if I stay in the picture. And if I refuse, she'll expose our relationship, twist the facts, ruin the foundation, and drag you through the mud." My hand moved protectively over my stomach. "I can't believe this is happening," I whispered. "What about the children at the center who rely on your foundation grants? This could destroy everything good we've built." He nodded, eyes full of regret. "I'm not going to let that happen. But I need to figure out a strategy. Laura's capable of anything." That night, I hardly slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured reporters swarming my apartment, kids from the center hearing ugly rumors, or Laura turning the city against me. I felt so helpless. But my fear for my unborn twins fueled a new resolve in me. I had to protect them. I needed to be strong. We returned to the city the next day. I tried to go about my life, but a few afternoons later, everything exploded. Gossip sites posted photos of me and Oscar at the cabin, hugging by the lake. They wrote stories claiming I was a gold digger chasing a married man. The worst part was seeing my name and the community center linked to scandalous headlines. Reporters showed up at the center calling my name. The staff had to block them from entering. Some donors began to back away, afraid their names would be tied to the scandal. My boss asked me to take a leave of absence until the dust settled. I felt tears burning as I packed up some of my personal items, uncertain when I might return. The children's drawings lined the walls, mocking me with reminders of better days. I could barely walk out of that building without crumbling in despair. Oscar tried to control the damage. He held a press conference, explaining that his marriage was a business arrangement and that he intended to step out of it, but the media twisted his words. Laura's family released statements saying Oscar was lying, portraying me as a homewrecker. My phone rang constantly, with unknown callers hurling insults or prying for stories. In my apartment, I closed the curtains, overwhelmed and exhausted. I was heavily pregnant now, and the stress was taking a toll on my body. My doctor urged me to keep calm for the baby's sake, but calm felt impossible. One late evening, a knock came at my door. When I opened it, Oscar stood there, looking worn out. He stepped inside and held me as I sobbed into his chest. "Everything is falling apart," I cried. "The community center, our privacy, your reputation. Why is she doing this to us?" Oscar stroked my hair gently. "Because she can. Because she doesn't want to lose power. But trust me, Nina, I'm going to fix this. We'll clear our names. We'll protect the children, yours, mine, and all those who depend on the foundation." He spoke with determination, and for a moment, I believed him. Then the phone rang, and a text popped up on his screen. It was from Laura. "Meet me alone tomorrow, or your precious Nina will pay for this." I saw it, and Oscar closed his eyes in frustration. "I'm so sorry," he said. "She's threatening you again." Fear sank like a stone in my gut. "Oscar, I don't know how much more of this I can take." He kissed my forehead, and I clung to him. "I swear this ends now." The next day, Oscar left to meet Laura in a public cafe. I waited in my apartment, anxiety gnawing at me. Hours passed with no word. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but I answered. "Hello. You should come if you want to protect your precious children," a female voice hissed. "Come to the Old K shipping warehouse by the docks. Hurry, or you'll regret it." My heart raced. Was that Laura? What was she planning? I felt panic rise, but I thought about Oscar, about everything we had endured. I grabbed my coat and rushed out, hailing a taxi. The city lights blurred past as I frantically made my way to the waterfront. When I arrived, the warehouse looked empty, with only a few flickering lights on the outside. My hands shook as I pushed open a heavy metal door. Inside it was mostly dark, the air thick with dust. I moved forward cautiously, calling out, "Oscar? Hello." A figure stepped into the beam of a single overhead light. Laura. She wore a dark coat, her eyes gleaming with malice. "You just couldn't leave well enough alone," she said, a sharp edge in her voice. "You had to come in and ruin everything." Oscar was supposed to be locked in this marriage. We were supposed to keep up appearances. Now the entire city is buzzing with gossip, and my father is furious. I'm the laughingstock of high society. I swallowed. "What do you want from me?" She gave a mocking laugh. "You're carrying his heirs. That complicates the business plans for us. I only intended to scare you off, but you kept digging in." Oscar appeared from the shadows. "Laura, stop this madness. You're only harming yourself." He looked disheveled, like he'd been cornered or threatened. I rushed to his side, relief flooding me. But Laura reached into her coat pocket, pulling out a small pistol. My blood turned to ice. "Neither of you is leaving until I get what I want," she spat. "I want to guarantee you'll stay away from me and my father's businesses. If you insist on this divorce, we'll bring you and your little girlfriend down. And those unborn brats," she sneered, nodding toward my belly. Oscar stepped forward, hands raised. Don't you dare talk about them like that. Laura, put the gun down. There's another way. She shook her head, tears of rage shining in her eyes. You never gave me a choice. My father never gave me a choice. I'm done being a pawn. If I can't have freedom, neither can you. I felt my heart pound so hard I could barely hear my own thoughts. I worried that stress might trigger early labor. My body trembled. Then I heard a sharp voice from behind Laura. Freeze. Drop the weapon. A group of police officers flooded in, red and blue lights flashing through the dusty windows. Laura's eyes went wide, and Oscar seized the chance to knock the gun from her hand. She screamed, struggling as the officers pinned her to the ground. I turned, tears streaming. Stella's husband, Dean, rushed in behind the officers. Stella had called him worried about my safety, and he had used his influence to track my phone's location. Relief spilled over me, mixing with the shock of the confrontation. Laura was arrested, and as they escorted her away, she spewed threats and curses at Oscar and me. My legs gave way, and I sank into Oscar's arms sobbing. He held me tightly. It's over, he said, his voice raw with emotion. It's finally over. The fallout from Laura's arrest was swift. She was charged with attempted assault, and further investigations revealed how she and her father had been manipulating funds and blackmailing business partners. The media frenzy reached its peak, but this time, the truth was on our side. The scandal shifted from me being a homewrecker to the twisted deals of Laura's family. Oscar's lawyers moved quickly to finalize the divorce. Laura's father lost leverage as his shady dealings came to light. The K Foundation, although shaken, remained stable thanks to other board members who believed in Oscar's integrity. Donations poured in from new supporters who admired the foundation's mission and wanted to distance themselves from the corrupt business practices of Laura's family. Despite the chaos, I focused on my pregnancy. My doctor insisted I rest more, so I stayed home most days. Oscar stood by me, making sure I had help. He hired a nurse to check on me. Stella visited often, bringing me home-cooked meals. Eventually, I returned to the community center on a part-time basis, though I was careful with my health. The children welcomed me back with hugs and cheerful songs. The older kids teased me about my growing belly, and the younger ones asked if they could babysit. Their joy made everything feel worthwhile. Oscar and I moved in together to a small house on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't as grand as his penthouse, but it felt more like a home for a growing family. We painted a nursery with bright pastel colors and little animals dancing across the walls. Every day, he left new poems on the fridge for me to find. I kept them in a scrapbook, each one a small promise of hope and love. One late afternoon, as I was reading a picture book in the nursery, I felt a strong contraction. My water broke soon after. Oscar rushed me to the hospital, heart pounding. A swirl of nurses and doctors surrounded me. The labor was difficult, lasting many hours. I squeezed Oscar's hand through the pain, and he whispered encouragement, telling me how strong I was. Finally, our baby boy and girl entered the world, their cries filling the room. Tears of awe and relief poured down my cheeks. I could hardly believe I was holding them in my arms. Oscar cut the umbilical cords, his own eyes misty with emotion. Looking at the tiny faces, so perfect and fragile, I felt a wave of unconditional love wash over me. Oscar kissed my forehead, whispering, "They're beautiful." We named our son Noah and our daughter Melody. Noah after the feeling of a fresh start, and Melody after the music that brought us together in the first place. In the days following the birth, we stayed at the hospital to recover. Friends came to visit, bringing flowers and gifts for the twins. Stella cried the first time she held them. Dean joked that he would teach them to dance at their first birthday party. My boss from the community center dropped by with kind words of reassurance that my job would always be there when I was ready to return. Oscar handled the final paperwork for his divorce. With Laura facing legal trouble, the marriage ended smoothly. For the first time, Oscar was truly free. Although the path to that freedom had been filled with threats and danger, We both felt a deep sense of relief that it was finally in the past. We took the twins home to our cozy house. Life changed in ways I never thought possible. Sleepless nights, constant feedings, and the sweet routine of caring for two little lives. Oscar was a devoted father. He helped with midnight diaper changes, sang lullabies, and read bedtime stories in soothing tones. The sight of him cradling our children filled me with warmth. The media scandal began to fade, replaced by other headlines. People eventually moved on, and we were left with our growing family and a sense of closure. A month later, the K Foundation hosted a grand event celebrating new beginnings, featuring a charity auction for community arts programs. Despite the hush-hush nature of my relationship with Oscar before, he proudly introduced me to everyone as his partner, Nina Riva, and showed a short video of the music therapy programs we had helped grow. The crowd applauded, and for once, I didn't feel overshadowed by his influence or the eyes of onlookers. I felt accepted and respected, standing beside him with our twins nestled in a stroller by our table. During his speech, Oscar talked about the importance of love and resilience. He spoke of how adversity had pushed us to fight harder for the things we believe in. I listened from the audience, tears pricking my eyes, knowing exactly what he meant. When the event ended, we lingered in the empty hall for a moment. Oscar stood at the stage, bouncing Melody in his arms, while Noah slept peacefully in the stroller. I walked up to him, my heels echoing across the floor, and slipped my arm around his waist. He kissed me in front of the big velvet curtains, a simple, tender kiss that spoke of everything we had endured. Time continued forward, one day at a time. The twins grew, learning to roll over, then crawl, then toddle around the house with curious eyes and playful shrieks. I returned to the community center in a reduced role, balancing motherhood with my passion for music therapy. The children there welcomed me back with warm hearts. We started new projects, funded by the K Foundation and other donors who believed in art's power to heal. Oscar and I learned how to be partners in both love and work. We faced arguments and misunderstandings, but we tried to address them openly. He sometimes stressed over business deals, but he never again kept me in the dark. We attended counseling sessions to build trust and deal with the scars left by Laura's betrayal. Each step, each day, brought us closer together. On our first holiday with the twins, we gathered at Stella's house. The living room was decked out with lights and garlands. Stella's parents fussed over how cute Noah and Melody were. Dean carved the turkey, and Oscar carried the kids around, introducing them to each family member. As I stood watching from the corner, I felt my heart swell with love. I was no longer just the music therapist with a passion for helping kids. I was a mother, a partner, and a woman who had fought through heartbreak and lies to find a truth worth holding on to. I had discovered that love isn't always neat or simple. It can be messy, even painful. But when it's real, it endures. After dinner, I found Oscar in the backyard, swaying gently on a wooden swing. He cradled Melody, who was half asleep in his arms. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and joined them. For a moment, we simply stared up at the stars. The air was crisp and the sky was clear. Oscar turned to me, a soft smile on his face. "I know our path here wasn't easy," he whispered, "but I thank whatever force brought you into my life. I promise every day I'll fight to make sure you and our children feel safe and loved." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I believe you. We can't change the past, but we can choose how we move forward. You showed me that by never giving up on us, even when everything seemed lost." He nodded, pressing a kiss to my hair. "Here's to a future built on love, truth, and redemption." I looked at him, and then at Melody, whose tiny fingers wrapped around his shirt collar. A wave of gratitude filled me. We were a family born out of chaos, but mended with honesty and care. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of winter pine. And in that quiet moment under the stars, I felt a sense of peace. We had overcome betrayal, public scrutiny, and threats. We had stitched our hearts back together, forging a bond strong enough to face whatever came next. I closed my eyes, letting the gentle sway of the swing and the soft murmur of the wind lull me into calm. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. And for the first time in a long while, I believed in a happy ending.